In 1930, a young Mexican girl wandered into a cave not far from where she lived. She found two skeletons buried within a cave. One of the skeletons, specifically the skull, was quite unusual and very different from the other. She decided to take the unusual looking skull back home with her. The skull, which was nicknamed the Starchild skull, has sparked a fierce debate in the scientific community that lasts to this day. Modern technological and scientific advancements, such as DNA sequencing, have only deepened the mystery of the Starchild.
Radiocarbon dating tests reveal the skull is roughly 900 years old. And according to a dentist who examined the upper jaw, the mysterious relic came from a child no more than 5 years old. Mainstream scientists insist the deformation of what is now known as the Starchild skull is due to a genetic disorder, most likely hydrocephalus, a condition in which an abnormal amount of fluid causes the skull to enlarge. But paranormal researcher and caretaker of the skull, Lloyd Pye, says he has ruled out this possibility based on the skull's unique shape.
It wasn't hydrocephalic because it's clear that if you're hydrocephalic, you blow up like a balloon. You don't blow up with a defined shape and with a crease down the middle. You definitely don't grow up with a crease down the middle between two of your suture lines.
But many researchers are not only baffled by the volume of the skull, which measures more than 10% larger than that of an average adult, but also a number of other characteristics they say are distinctly not human.
The Starchild skull has half the thickness of ordinary human bone, but it's also twice as dense as ordinary human bone, with a consistency more similar to dental enamel. It has bizarre, thick strands in it, almost like there's some extra powerful weave inside the bone. It also has this bizarre reddish residue that appears to be similar to bone marrow, but very different from what we normally see.
There are no sinus cavities, for instance. There are many attachments inside the skull for tendons that human beings don't have. And it appears to be some sort of hybridization. It's part human, but also part something else.
When the Starchild skull is subjected to forensic reconstruction, the face that is produced appears eerily similar to descriptions of gray aliens.
But over the last 10 years with the Starchild project, we've had dozens of experts examine it, and they can come up with no kind of typical human deformity that matches all of the unusual things about this skull. Its unusual physiology begins with the bone itself. It's uniformly half as thick as normal human bone, and it weighs half as much. It's very light by comparison, and yet it's 2 or 3 times as hard. It's extremely durable. We think some of that durability comes from very unusual fibers woven through the matrix of the bone, never seen in any other animal of any kind. There's also a red residue found in the bone in the cancellous holes that is also very unlike any other bone that is known. So you have those unusual attributes right off the bat. Then in the rear we see that it lacks an inion, which is that knot that we all have in the back rear of our heads. Everybody has that. Chimps have it, gorillas have it, everything has it. And that's where your neck muscles attach. Its neck muscles attach all the way down here, right on top of the foramen magnum, meaning it has a very small neck, like half the size of a normal human neck. And it sits at a different angle. The head sits at a different angle than a normal human head. Very different. Chewing muscles very much reduced. Normally up here, down here in the Starchild. Very small lower face. Look at these eye sockets. Look how shallow they are. Not even as deep as the first knuckle of my finger, not even a full inch. In a human being, 2 full inches, all the way up to here, that depth. The eyes themselves are centered down here in the middle of the nose, so that the eyes are down here rather than up at the top like our eyes. Very, very unusual eyes. Unusual in so many ways. No sinuses in here. We've had all kinds of testing done over the past 10 years, not just taking it to experts to get their opinions, but CAT scans, X-rays, scanning electron microscope, everything we could think of, trying to find out what it is, and it all comes back. This is not normal. This is really unusual. So, the main test we've had has been DNA, and what the DNA has told us is remarkable. In 2003, we recovered very easily its mitochondrial DNA, which told us that its mother was human. But in 6 full attempts, we could not recover its nuclear DNA. And nuclear DNA comes from your mother and your father. And so that told us right away that the father was very unusual and the Starchild itself is very unusual. Now, during the course of this year, 2009, we're hoping to have a DNA test done that will recover the entire genome of this remarkable relic.
In early 2010, a team of geneticists in America began DNA testing on possibly the strangest looking skull ever discovered. Whilst trying to recover its nuclear DNA and matching it against the National Institute of Health database, they found a significant number of coherent base pairs that have never been seen before. This was an historic moment for science, as it proved beyond all reasonable doubt that part of the skull's DNA is not human. Since that result, the geneticists have predicted that when the final genome recovery is complete, it will provide science with the first record of alien DNA ever discovered. The skull's caretaker is Lloyd Pye. Lloyd, a researcher in aspects of human origins, named it the Starchild. It was found in Mexico in the 1930s, and through carbon dating, we know that the skull is over 900 years old. It has over 24 major physiological differences to that of a human.
These are the cuts in the skulls for DNA testing, and you see that the Starchild, when I've been saying it's half as thick, you see very clearly here. In some points it's even less than half, and this is, in the skull. So I mean, there's just no exaggeration there. It's a complete difference in the bone throughout. Uniformly, it's different.
This is the biochemistry of a typical human bone. Its calcium and phosphorus levels are high, and its oxygen and carbon levels are low. But with the Starchild, it's quite different. The phosphorus is down and the carbon and oxygen are up, indicating its biochemistry is more like tooth enamel than regular bone.
This is a scanning electron microscope view of the bone, and this is the way bone is created. You have the cortical layer here, and in here are the cancellous holes where the bone marrow moves. And coming out of some of the cancellous holes, but also embedded in the matrix of the bone, are these fibers, these very durable, strange fibers that nobody's ever seen before. They're in no other species, and we don't really know what they are, but we just know that they're really durable because the Dremel blade that cut this through here did not cut cleanly these different fibers. That tells you they have a high resistance factor to the blade.
It lacks frontal sinuses, has smaller chewing muscles, and is missing an inion. Instead, its neck connects on top of its frame and magnum opening, indicating that its neck is about half the size of a normal human neck.
And here we see one clearly embedded in the matrix of the bone on the surface. I mean, there's just no doubt about it. And you know what science says about this? You probably dropped it on a carpet and it picked up carpet fibers. Really, that is the answer that I get. It has to be just fibers off a carpet or something. This can't be, it really can't be in the world of mainstream science, but there it is.
This is a piece of upper right maxilla that was found with the Starchild. When one of the teeth was extracted, it was found to have very heavy roots, indicating it was an adult when it died. When the maxilla was x-rayed, a staggering 5 more teeth were discovered, waiting to come down.
The key is that normal human bone, when you die, there are bacteria in your body that scour and eat every bit of your marrow out, and they leave your bone polished, shining, just like this, just like you see. You could eat out of that just like the bacteria did. It's so clean. There is no marrow left anywhere. And this is the way it is with all animals when they die. With a Starchild, we see a big difference. And we also see a difference in the color too. It's much more milkier than that alabaster look of the human bone because it's got so much more collagen. But you see this red residue here sprinkled everywhere. We don't know what that is. Never seen it before, and it's not in any other species. It's not blood because when blood oxidizes, it's not our blood anyway, or our type blood, because when blood oxidizes, it turns black. So if that was bone marrow, that would be black. So those two things, the fibers and the residue, are just unknown in anything else. And here they sit in the Starchild, both of them, and yet science just says, you know. And this is what they say. This is what you need to understand about science. And all of these physiological differences that I've just pointed out, they mean nothing to mainstream science. They mean nothing. In January of this year, a geneticist contacted me out of the blue, and he said, I think you really might have something. And he said, if you send me a sample, I will take a new technique, a new shotgunning technique, which recovers much smaller pieces than the old primer technique. So he took it. About 6 weeks later, he got back in touch with me and he says, you're really not going to believe what's happening here. I don't believe it. I've done it enough times now to where I'm convinced that I'm doing it right, and we're getting some very unusual results. Some of it comes out human, sure enough. You see right here, this sequence of 265 base pairs long, 265, no question about it, part of the Starchild is human. Except, next slide, some of the Starchild's DNA comes back with this incredible reading. No significant similarity found. 342 base pairs long. It's a coherent base pair sequence not found in the NIH database. I said, well, what's the answer? And he says, well, it could be, and here's where we go off the deep end. It could be that it's an alien, entirely an alien, born to a human mother.
Hey everyone, Drew here from Mad Cat Mysteries, and I hope you enjoyed the video you just watched. If you did, you can click on the subscribe button below. I'd appreciate it. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.